Alright, just gonna do a quick little deck profile. Some people have been requesting me to try to do deck profiles or deck techs while I've been streaming. So, figure I'll go ahead, do one, see how it turns out. Might do some more, might not, we'll see. So, this is a deck that I played at a tournament we had this past weekend. I took second in it. Ended up losing to the winner, obviously. Lost to the same deck twice, actually. So I can link the deck tech to that deck in my description. So what you're looking at here, just a red yellow build, splash blue. So we'll go through the cards in the levels, then we'll run through how I attempt to play the deck. So first up, level 0, I'm running 4 of these knocked out Omnite. They have the ability that if you have 2 or fewer stock, this card goes up by +1k, +1 level. Next, I'm running 3 of the Carbuncle. This has the ability, when it attacks, you can pump another card by +1k, +1 level. So it's very useful for getting around clock, or getting around level reversers, clock reversers, stock reversers at level 0, or any level for that matter. Second ability, main reason why he's in the deck, is that he has a bond to the level 3 Arl, where you simply drop a card from hand, bond to that from waiting room. Next up, I'm running 2 of the Shezo here. He is a stock reverser, so when he becomes reversed, if his opponent is level 0 or lower, you can put that opponent's card into their stock, and then put the bottom card of their stock into waiting room. For Brainstorm here, I'm running 2 of the Sig Brainstormer. He's Rest Himself, mill the top 4 for every climax you hit. Salvage. So it's a Salvage Brainstorm, and his secondary ability is that he gives the front row center the ability that it cannot be reversed by auto effects. Running 2 of the Runner Ringo. This one is a mill runner, so at the beginning of your opponent's attack step, mill the top of your deck. If it's a Puyo character, which everything here, aside from the climaxes, is a Puyo character, it can move to any open slot in the front row. Running 2 of the Ringo Ricky clone. It has the ability, when it comes into play, pay 1, clock yourself, and then you can search for a level 1 or lower from deck. As a one of, I'm running an additional Brainstormer. This is Draco Centaurus Brainstormer. This is a pay 1, rest 2, mill 4, search Brainstormer. So it allows you to be able to search in your deck, while this one allows you to grab from your waiting room. So that's my level 0 lineup that I was running. At level 1 here, as a 4 of, I'm running this, the 1-0 Witch, I believe. This has ability when it comes into play, gets 500 for every Puyo character on stage. So that means it gains 500 for itself as well as everybody else. So it's usually coming in at like a 6.5 or 7k base. And then it climax combos with a stock soul climax. Wherein when it attacks, you reveal the top of your deck. If it's a Puyo character, add it to hand. As a 3 of, running this level reverser Omnite. She's a level 1 reverser. That's one of her abilities. Second ability, actually I'm starting from the bottom, but middle ability here is a climax combo with a +2 soul. When this card is in play and this climax is in your climax area and your opponent levels up, you get to salvage one. And its other ability is that when it's on stage, it counts as a red Puyo. That ability never gets used in this deck, but it's got it. Next up, we've got knocked out Carbuncle. It has a really nice ability here wherein if it's in the front row center, it gets +1 soul, and it has Clock Encore. So almost always want to have one of these out in the front center as part of my game plan. As a couple 2-ofs here, I'm running this the cat here. I think it's Popoy is the name. It is 7k base with clock on core. Its downside is that it cannot side attack, so it has to front attack into things or direct attack into an empty space. Also have a 2-of, I'm running this Rafine 1-1. It's a level assist, and it also has the Azusa Akatsuki type ability, wherein when it comes into play, drop a card from hand, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, add one, reveal it to your opponent, add it to hand, pitch the rest. The 3-of here, I'm running this, what is it? I think it's Carbuncle being whimsical or something like that. This one has the ability that it gives 1k in front, but more importantly, it gives cards in front of it the ability this card cannot be targeted. Running 2 of the Amite 2-1 backup. It's a 2-5 backup. Second ability, when you play this card's backup, reveal the top of your deck. If it's a Puyo character, add it to hand, then drop a card. So very useful counter. It's the same as the Sword Art Online's Leafa counter, that famous one. As 3-of, I'm running this 3-2 Amite. She has several abilities. One is she has an early play condition, which is just if this 0-0 Amite is in your level zone, or not level zone, sorry, if it's in your clock. If it's in your clock at level 2, this loses a level in hand, and so it can come out early. When it comes out, it has the ability that you can look at to the top X cards of your deck, where an X is the number of Puyo characters on your field, and you can grab a card from among them and add it to hand. So it doesn't have to be a character, and you don't have to show it to your opponent. Her other ability is that she gains plus 500 power for every other Puyo character on field. So if you got a full field, she's at 11k base. And the most important card in the deck here, the 3-2 Arl. This card is ridiculous. It has 2 abilities on it. First is that it has, on the turn this comes into play, if your opponent cancels its damage, they burn 1. Second ability is a climax combo with, I can't remember how it's pronounced, I think it's like Baoing or something. That climax ability gives this card another instance of that punish burn. So if your opponent cancels, they burn 2, and when it attacks, gives all your characters plus 2k. So if you throw out a field of this, the last one will be attacking for a base of 16,000. And as my climaxes, running the yellow stock soul, and I'm running the red plus 2 soul. Now, something of note here, this card is originally, at least design-wise, supposed to run here with this wind trigger, but if you notice, these 2 cards have the exact same name, so it combos with a plus 2 soul as well as comboing with a wind trigger. So after playing around with it a bit, I've opted to just go all in on the plus 2 souls because it gives you some interesting options that we'll go into a bit later here as we make our way through what you plan to do at every level with this deck. So level 0, nothing particularly complicated going on there. Just running a standard 0 game, trying to keep field presence and build up some stock. There are a few things of note here. Since I'm running this as a 4-of, I'm typically going to have one of these out at level 0. So it makes a good first round play because it's going to be sitting at 3-5, or if you have one of these out behind it sitting at 4k, and it's going to be a level 1, so your opponent can't side attack it to get without taking soul penalty, and they also can't use their level 0 reverse effects on it. Another good card to try and get out early if you draw into it would be these runners. They're great because they can just run all over the field, since most of this deck is gonna be Puyo. Unless you run into a climax, it's gonna be able to run, keep it away from any pesky cards that can reverse it, and help it to keep field presence and build stock, like any good runner will do. If you draw onto this, you're gonna wanna usually search out one of your level 1 climax combos. Typically it's going to be the witch here. You'll want to search out, and either you'll already have this in hand or you'll hope to draw into it before level 1 is over. Now this Shezo is actually a pretty interesting card. You can put him out first because with his stock reversibility, your opponent may choose not to front attack into it. But he's a bit more interesting if you wait until your opponent puts something out and attacks a couple of times and then play him. Because with his stock reversibility, if say your opponent triggers a climax and then another card, or rather, no, let's take that back. If they trigger just a regular card and they trigger a climax, more than likely the next turn they're going to try and play a brainstorm or a searcher or something to pay that climax out. If you throw this out, front into something, whatever it might be, and send that card to their stock, then the bottom card of stock goes out. So now you've just pushed that climax to the bottom of their stock. So they may not have enough cards in their hand to be able to pay out 2 stock that early in the game. So it's a good way of being able to help push climaxes into your opponent's stock. So either force them to overextend to try to pay that out, or they just may double down and just have to play with 7 climaxes. Another ability this card has that I forgot to go over is that if his damage cancels, you can pay 1 and then draw a card. So that's actually useful for yourself to pay out climaxes. Since the climaxes run in this deck are 2 soul climaxes, you have an increased chance of canceling his attack, or of having his attack cancel, and then you can pay that climax out immediately with his secondary effect. You're usually going to want to try and get one of these brainstormers out into the back row as soon as you can, but not 100% certain, or 100% necessary. At level 1, things get a bit more interesting because you have a couple options. You've got 2 combos that can fire off at level 1, and both of them are good, and it's gonna depend a lot on reading the game state, reading your opponents, keeping track of where the climaxes are, and keeping track of where your climaxes are, and deciding which climax combo you want to play. Usually this is the more important climax combo to get off because it pluses to hand, but a thing to keep in mind with this is that this card has an increased chance of triggering climaxes and putting climaxes in your stock, because you're going to remove if your first card when you reveal when this attacks is a Puyo character, you're going to remove it, so then there's a chance the next card underneath of it is going to be a climax. So if you, say, play out 3 of these and then attack, you're going to be milling through 6 cards of your deck, as opposed to a typical attack step where you're only going to mill through 3. So there's a much greater chance of running into a climax within those 6 cards. So I typically don't play 3 of these out at once. Additionally, she only gets her power when she comes into play. So after that, she's just a 4 or 5 really tiny level 1 that is usually going to die. So you may not want to play this out early. Now, so you would think, okay, you'll just jump to playing out this Amite early, which is useful because she gets her ability of when your opponent her climax combo goes off when your opponent levels up. So if we hit level 1 first, you can push through damage, level your opponent up to level 1, and then you get to salvage. The issue you may run into is if you're that early in the game, your opponent probably still gonna have quite a few climaxes left in their deck. And so you're going to be playing a +2 soul for her climax combo, so you're going to have increased chance of canceling. especially since that early in the game, the opponent may not have a full field, or they're going to have zeros out there. So even if you side attack, you're not going to be reducing your soul damage. So there's a number of times where I end up having to attack into like an empty space with one of these, or with anything, attack for 6, and it just cancels. And then your opponent just triple cancels, and you don't get to level them up, and you don't get your climax combo off. So it's just a matter of trying to balance out which one of these you want to fire off first, depending on what you get into your hand. If you have a lot of climaxes left in your deck, you probably don't want to play this one first, because since this one doesn't have to reverse its opponent to get its hand plus effect off, you can run it later, you can run it at early level 2 or at any point, and you can still get benefit off of it. Though the same could be said with this card. If you're running at late level 1 and you push your opponent to level 2, you get her climax combo off. So you just have to keep an eye on where your climaxes are, where your opponent's climaxes are, and adjust accordingly. Another thing to do at level 1, I'm typically going to try and get one of these out into the front row center, and since he gets an additional soul just for being in front row center, I'm almost always side attacking with him. Then if the opponent attacks into him, because he's just going to be sitting at probably maybe 5k, he gets reversed, you clock encore and back, nothing to worry about there. He'll keep field presence and keep putting damage onto your opponent. Or you could just straight front with him for a 2 soul base, and then with one of these climaxes, he can help you to really push damage through. I'm running this PuyoPuyo here. Honestly, he doesn't see a whole ton of play. A lot of times I actually just use him as clock fodder. But I want to keep some form of costed 1/1 attacker in the deck. Because I know locally we have at least one player who plays Indux Railgun, so that Brainstorm that kills cost 0s in the front row can be a real pain. And I know there's that card, I believe in Schoolgirl Strikers, that if the opponent is if the opponent's card is cost 0, it doesn't reverse, or something like that. So if that's any indication of where Bushiroad may be going with some of the cards are playing out, you at least want to have some sort of costed attacker, some sort of costed beat stick available to you. This Rafina here, she isn't essential at level 1. I usually want to have her out by level 2. But that Akatsuki effect that she has is pretty useful for if you're near the end of your deck and you know there's climaxes in there. If you brainstorm, those cards go to resolution area and you don't get to refresh with them if those are the last 4 cards of your deck. This though, since it mills them direct, since you're looking at the cards, choosing one, and putting the rest directly into waiting room, it's a nice way of being able to push, get all your climaxes back into your waiting room before a refresh. And of course her level assist ability is very useful for when you get to level 2. And level 2 game is actually this level 3 because of the ridiculously easy early play stipulation of just having this in your clock. So you can either just salvage one of them from your brainstorm or search it out, or sometimes it'll just end up there naturally. But I almost always get this into my clock so that I can play this early. Now her job, she provides very nice field presence, and she's sitting at about 11k base if you have a full field. But the main job that she has is to help set up for your level 3 game, because your ability to look through the top 5, potentially the top 5 cards of your deck, and grab any card from the top of any card from among those means you can grab your +2 soul climax. So you can make sure that you have that in hand, or if you already have your +2 soul climax, you can grab either the RO directly, or you can grab the Carbuncle, which I didn't really go over Carbuncle, but it's pretty obvious that you're using him to bond for RO. Also, he's good for discarding climaxes as well. So is this card. So between these, you have 5 different ways of discarding your climaxes that you can run into. The backup, not necessarily crazy useful. It is, I find this to be more useful at level 3, and just being a means to be able to help mitigate damage when you mill off the top of your deck, making your chance of canceling better. This Carbuncle, his use becomes kind of it's situational. You don't always have to get him out, but if you know your opponent's deck and you know that they have anti-damage counters, or if you know they have anti-change counters, you can put him out there. If she's out in front of him, she can't be anti-changed away and gets a nice little power boost. And more importantly, for level 3, it ensures that her burn combo goes off. So at level 3, basically the entire game, the entire point of this deck is trying to build up at least 6 stock and get 3 of these into your hand, as well as the climax. And also to try to get your opponent to, if you can get your opponent to 3-1 before dropping this on field, you're almost guaranteed a win, unless they have their climaxes just stacked up. Because if you get 3 of these out, your first one's going to be attacking for like 4 soul, so that's like getting shot in the face by Xenon. 4 soul attack. If they cancel that, they're burn 1, then burn 1. So that's 3 instances of damage from 1 card, and everybody gets pumped up by 2k power. Second one, same deal, another 3 instances. Third one, same deal, another 3 instances of damage. So even if they had all 8 climaxes back in deck and stacked up one on top of each other, you're going to push through damage if you get this combo off. Now, one of the reasons why I opted to go with the +2 soul with this, as opposed to the Wind Trigger 1k1, is, for one, power isn't particularly needed because they give 2k power with their climax combo. And honestly, you don't necessarily care if they survive the turn so much, because you just need them to go out there and deal mad damage. So the +2 soul helps them deal mad damage. They're going to be fronting for 4 soul. But more importantly, it opens up more options for side attacking. So let's say your opponent, your opponent does have some form of anti-damage counter, and you haven't been able to get the carbuncles out. They get stuck in stock or whatever. Or you're only able to get 1 of them out, and you're only able to put can't be targeted on 2 of your Arl. Well, depending on what your opponent's field is looking like, if they have a level 1 or a level 2 out there, your third Arl, just put it in front of that, side attack. You're side attacking for 3 soul. You're side attacking for 2 soul. Not to mention whatever you might end up triggering. And if you manage to, say, with 2 of your Arls, push your opponent to 3-6, and you have one that's up against level 3, side attack for 1. They cancel that, they have to cancel 1 again, and then cancel 1 again if they want to survive. So that's the main reason why I've opted to go for the +2 soul in this deck as opposed to the Wind Trigger. Wind Trigger isn't, you can't necessarily control when you hit the Wind Trigger, and sometimes it's nothing good to bounce back to your opponent's hand, so I like the +2 soul with this. That said, there are some weaknesses to the deck, mainly being that a lot of times, since you're running 8 2-soul triggers, you're going to end up over-swinging quite often. So it can get a little bit frustrating when you're trying to maybe pinpoint damage. You hit a 2-soul trigger, you overswing, the opponent cancels, and you don't get that damage in that you thought you were going to get in. That said, in my experience with the deck, just by, I don't know, law of averages if you want to call it, since this deck is always hitting for just huge amounts of damage, one of those is going to go through eventually. So say you end up swinging into an empty slot with a 2 soul out just because you want to build the stock, you're swinging for 4, you trigger, you swing for 6. There's been times when that 6 sticks. And when 6 sticks, that's one attack is now equivalent to a whole turn of just regular cards attacking with a 1k1 out. So it ends up equaling out in the end here, and then with just the wilting amounts of damage that the Arl does at the end, this deck does end up performing pretty well. Now, as you may already be thinking, this deck, though, gets completely shut down. Its endgame gets completely shut down by anti-burn. So if you run into an anti-burn deck, if you're running into Charlotte, you're running into Log Horizon, if you're running into Shauna, you can't rely on your Arls to take the victory at level 3. Which is another reason why I just have the +2 souls. So if that's the case, you know your opponent has some form of anti-burn either in effect or in the deck, just go crazy, throw out whatever you want here, and just +2 soul them all day so that you can just pelt them with soul damage, preferably before their first refresh. So this is the deck that I played, again, past weekend. Took second, only losses were to the same deck, Monogatari deck, and so it did perform pretty well. That said, this isn't necessarily the status that the deck is in now. I did make just a quick change that I'm testing. So I eliminated one of the level 1 or level 0 Amites, and I did go ahead and eliminate one of the Whimsical Carbuncle at level 2. So I took that down to a 3 of, took this down to a 2 of, and I put in this this card here, which I believe is called All Clear. This is a 2/0 event, and what this does is when you play it, both players refresh their decks. They refresh, and then you can give one of your characters +1 soul. Reason why I opted to put this card into the deck now is that I noticed a lot of the games that I ended up losing were games where just my climaxes went every which way but where they were supposed to go. So I ended up triggering climaxes into stock, or I milled through a bunch of climaxes early, and then I just ended up eating a bunch of damage to the face. And since this deck does not have any healers, there's not a really good way to mitigate that, and so even if you have a killer combo, you can't get it off if you're already dead. So this card is really useful in all the games that I've tested it in thus far. It's either been I've either played it and it made a real difference, or it would have made a difference had I played it, because that ability to be able to refresh yourself, avoid taking a refresh point, and get climaxes back into your deck, very useful. Now noted, it is a two-edged sword because it refreshes your opponent as well. So you have to keep an eye on where's your opponent's climaxes. Do they have climaxes in their stock? Do they have a climax in their clock? Hey, refresh them, make sure those climaxes don't get back in, and then proceed to just slam into them for damage. But I do find that this deck, more so than, say, preventing your opponent from doing what they want to do, you just want to ensure that you can do what you want to do, because this finisher is so strong, and the +2 soul throughout the whole game, just a soul rush, is also strong. There's not much they're going to be able to do to prevent that from happening. So this card enables me to get my game plan going, more so than worrying about preventing your opponent from getting their game plan from going, because this deck just has a strong game plan. Some ways to play this is if you have a lot of stock built up. Since this is 2/0, what I've done, like say if the last card I triggered was a climax, start of my turn, I'll brainstorm, pay that climax out, then I'll play this. So I've got all this stock over here that does not get shuffled back in, so I'm shuffling up a rather compressed deck that will help me survive the next turn, where I can hopefully drop down the Arls. With that in mind, another change I may make, I may increase the number of my search brainstorms if I'm going to start using my free refresh more. But honestly, you could also just use this brainstorm before you free refresh, because it doesn't matter if you end up milling out climaxes, because they're going to go right back into your deck. So I'm finding this card is really useful. I'm going to keep testing it out, see if I continue to like it. But it's proven to be really useful in all the matchups, all the test games I played with it. Additionally, since this Amite can grab any card, you can also use it to grab this event. So even though you can't search or salvage this event, this card still gives you a good means of being able to grab it. So I believe that is it. Let's see, did I cover everything? What every card is in here for? I believe so. So that about wraps it up. If you have any thoughts or suggestions, feel free to comment in the YouTube comments. Can't guarantee that I'll respond, but I will read them. And if you are interested in seeing why Schwartz played, I stream quite a bit on Twitch. Also, I stream from our local shop, usually on Sundays, or if it's not me, it'll be another player that we have who also streams. I'll put those links in the description. But thus far, thanks for viewing in, or thanks for tuning in, and thanks for watching.